Okay, guys and girls, this is the subwoofer that I pulled out of my Ford Ranger today. It had the B&O 10 speaker, and that is the sub. That is smaller than the speakers in the doors. I don't understand how they made this the subwoofer for this vehicle. It's like 5¼ inch sub in a relatively large ported enclosure. What I have to the left of it is the Kicker 8-inch powered sub that I put behind the seat in my truck. I mean, I already have it wired up. I just pulled the wire out of it so I could get a picture of it here. But that thing is so much better. And this to me is a must-do first upgrade without question for this truck. If I had one of these on order, I would already buy this Kicker 8-inch sub and have it sitting in my garage ready to go for when my truck got here, so I could rip out that tiny little excuse for a subwoofer and put something else in. This isn't even a big sub, and the fact that it's like 10 times better than that should tell you how subpar that little, oh my gosh, that was terrible, how bad that little subwoofer is. It's just underpowered. It looks, I mean, it's got a big old magnet on the back, but not a very strong magnet. Like the screws just fell right, like it sucked up the screws and then I pulled them off. Normally, when screws get stuck to a speaker, they are a pain to get off that magnet, but it's kind of weak. So the rest of the speakers in this truck are awesome. With this new sub, everything is well-rounded. This is the way to go. So I tried to get a video or an audio clip of it. It's just impossible to get good sound over a YouTube channel on an iPhone. I'll try again tomorrow. I have some better microphones, but I just don't know if it's even possible to show you how much better this is. I mean, take my word for it. This is what you need. This is the Kicker 8-inch hideaway sub. So I wanted to see if I could make it fit without cutting anything crazy out. So I'm going to see what I can do. If I can't make it fit, I'm going to take it back. But I'm going to try really hard to get this to work. So based on the size of this thing, there's no way it's going to fit over here to the left. I mean, that bracket is welded in. I don't want to cut it out. This actually, there's like a piece of metal that comes forward to here, so it's touching right there, so it can't fit under here. I'm thinking the only thing I can do is take the existing sub out and see if it fits right there. So I'm going to go get my wrench and pull this thing out. If I can make it fit, I'll just replace it. What size we need for that? 8mm. At this point, I'm just going to try to rip this thing out of here. It took me a long time. It was hard to get to the screws down at the bottom, and then once you get the whole thing completely detached, you can't get the subwoofer out with the seat where it is. And then to get the seat out, you have to move the amplifier on the other side. So here I'm taking the cover off of the seat belt thinking that might do it, but the actual subwoofer molding is all the way underneath that seat belt. So this is me just struggling with it for about probably 20 minutes, just trying so hard not to have to take the seat out. And then I start looking at the bracket, wondering how I can actually detach the seat. Eventually I just give in and go and get my wrench and take the seat out. But I'm still trying to push against the padding and rip this thing out, but it's just not happening. So getting the amplifier off was a pain also because the lower two bolts, you have to go under the seat to get to it. The top two bolts come right out. And then the wiring harness is stuck on that subwoofer. So you unclip that, you unclip all the amplifiers, and then you get the bolts out. This is me underneath the seat trying to get those bottom two bolts for the amplifier. So eventually I get it all out, and then I'm able to get the two bolts for the seat out and move just the driver's side portion of the back seat forward enough to make just enough room for the subwoofer enclosure to come out. Come on. Yes. Here is the subwoofer out of the back of the Ranger. I mean, it's out of a Ranger Raptor, but it's the Ford Ranger 10 speaker. No, I brought the wrong wrench. So I thought that this was a 6.5. I'm looking at it now. It looks a lot smaller than that. We are in. Cover is off. So here we go. Very underwhelming subwoofer. Decent sized magnet on the back, dual coil. So I mean, it's not a single voice coil, it's a dual voice coil. This is good for me to know. Purple and yellow on this side, green and black on that side. Comes out to this wiring harness. So I'm going to need to trace that to make sure when I pull these wires, because I'm going to use these wires as the wires that I hook up to my new one. And you don't want to put, like, since there's 4 wires and you don't know what's what, you don't want to put like 2 negatives to it or 2 positives. That won't do any good. And you definitely don't want to combine them together, a negative to a positive, because then you just have a completely closed circuit with no impedance, and that will do bad things to the amplifier. So that, let me get the tape measure and see. So that is a 5 1/4. So this 8-inch sub that we're putting in is going to be so much better. All right, so we got some sun on this one so you can see comparing the two. So overall size of the enclosures, obviously there's way more volume inside of here. It's bigger that way, it's longer, it's got this whole chunk up there, but this speaker is in a sealed enclosure, so basically you're only getting sound out of the front, and with that smaller volume in there, it's going to be a lot tighter bass. It's not going to have to use so much power to move the cone, because when it goes down, it has enough pressure to push out. So this is very scientific. I'm looking at where the hard points were. I don't really see anything, so I don't just want to do Velcro to this. I'm going to secure it somehow. There's a thing here. If that snaps in, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Or I could put it on the back of the seat. But one way or the other, it's going to happen. So we will look and see where this fits the very, very best. So that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to stick with the speaker in the vertical orientation like that. My initial concern was the wires on top getting pinched or kind of kinked by the seat going back. But as I looked at it, I don't think that's going to be a problem. The wiring portion where the wiring harness goes into the sub is further back. So, and then I tucked the wires behind the sub instead of down the side. So that's not a problem. At this point, I'm just putting that back seat bolts back together, getting the wiring back into that amplifier, and tightening everything back down. Being very careful not to strip anything out, because the whole adage, tight, tight, or loose, is, you know, we say it for a reason, and stripping something out sucks, because then you got to retap the whole bolt. So I get everything tightened back down. Next thing I have to do is run the power wire, which is the biggest pain. It took me so long. So I get up in the engine bay, I find the boot that I'm going to use to go through. It's up by the pedals under the driver's side. I get the wires, I run it through, make sure it's not tangled on anything, and start going up underneath the trim there, as you can see. So I'm just tucking it in. I don't even have it done yet. And then I spend a long, long time going back and forth from the driver's cabin into the hood, and then into the driver's cabin, and then back to the hood. So it's just super frustrating. Don't let me forget to put this back on. Somebody comment, please, and say, hey man, did you remember to put that back on? Because when I'm checking the comments at like 11 o'clock tonight, I'll be like, oh shoot, no I didn't. So that will help me. So I keep going back and forth between under the hood in the engine bay and the driver's cabin. Eventually I got so frustrated with it, I kept trying to stick the wire through there, but it's like there's 3 pieces of rubber that you got to get through. There's one inside the driver's cabin that I cut with a knife, and then there's one in the engine bay that has like a nub that sticks out, so I cut that completely off, and I was able to stick a screwdriver through, because there's also like a rubber diaphragm in the middle of all of this, which is fantastic. It keeps the water or air or something, I don't know how much water is really in the engine bay, but it keeps, it's like a very tight seal in between. Just extremely difficult to get a wire through. So eventually what I did is I taped the wire to the screwdriver and just shoved the freaking thing through there. But then it took me like 10 minutes. Well, I say 10 minutes. It took me like a half hour to get the tape off the darn screwdriver. all I needed was a cable puller and I would have been done. So eventually I got it, and then I run the wire. I just ended up zip tying it to the hood release cable, and you know, it was super frustrating. And by this point, I was so mad that I spent 3 hours trying to get a wire through the firewall that I just did a crap job with all of the wire connectors. I was using like electrical tape and just twisting wires together and putting electrical tape on it. I didn't have any wire nuts. The little connectors they gave me with the subwoofer were really poor quality. Like I crimped it down and the wire just came right out of it. So I was getting really frustrated. By the end of this whole ordeal, at like the 5-hour mark, when I had started at maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon and now it's 7 o'clock, I just couldn't take it anymore. So I was so mad, I just cut the wiring off of the old subwoofer so I could use that, the clip in there, instead of having to, you know, tap into the wires. So now if I end up going back to the old sub, I'm gonna have to get my soldering iron out and some heat shrink and make it look professional. But in the end, I actually think it looks pretty good now. I plugged the clip that came on that old subwoofer, the existing subwoofer, into the current wiring harness, and now this subwoofer is all wired up. So it worked out. I'm gonna fix all of the wiring. I'm really pretty disappointed with how I did it, but I'm glad it worked, and I know I can fix it all in about 30 minutes tomorrow morning. So good sign, we got a blue light. My concern is that this is gonna drain the entire battery. Well, whatever, let's listen to it. So in an effort to avoid any copyright, I found this. All right, it's working, but I can't use Pandora while I record. Either way, the bass is like infinitely more, to the point where I've got to really tune this thing, because I had the gain at like 1/4 and it was overpowering. So we'll see what I can do. I'm gonna turn this garbage radio off because I don't know what that music is. So anyway, what I want to do now is make sure that when I turn it off, it actually powers down. The subwoofer installation is complete. Complete-ish. I got to rewire everything. I'm not happy with how I wired it. I was so frustrated spending 3 hours getting that wire through the firewall that I did a garbage job getting. Really every single connection is trash. The ground, I didn't even have a thing on the wire. I just wrapped the wire around the bolt and then screwed it down. The power, like the crimp came undone, so I used needle nose pliers just to crimp it more. And it still feels not loose, but it's moving around a little bit. And then the actual speaker, the signal wires, I just, you know, spread the wires out, twist it together, and put electrical tape on it. So every single connection is trash in this thing right now. It all works. It would probably continue to work, but I wouldn't be able to live with it knowing that that's how it is. So I'm going to Lowe's to get the right connector so tomorrow I can fix it. That being said, everything works. That blue light did turn off after a couple more minutes, so there's a capacitor in there somewhere that was keeping it lighted up. Not a big deal at all, but I did have it wired correctly. When I got back in the car, so when I hooked up the power, I got some sparkles, and I'm thinking, oh shit, you know, brand new truck, I'm already gonna screw up the electrical system. And then when I got back in and I turned the car on, it said, check your brake system. So I'm thinking, all right, so I blew a fuse or I did something stupid. And then I realized I didn't hook the sensor that I unplugged from the brake reservoir back up. So it was not a wiring thing. It was not an electrical thing. It was just a forgetting to reconnect that thing that I asked you guys to remind me of. Apparently my car reminded me. So that's all good. The quality of the sound out of this sub, night and day compared to the B&O subwoofer. That little subwoofer before was just, I mean, it wasn't doing anything. You had 6x9s in the doors, and then you put a 5.5-inch sub in the back. Come on, man, that's insane. Like, you're not getting anything out of a 5.5-inch ported sub that you're not getting out of 6x9s in the doors. So this thing is just so much better. This is anybody who's buying a Ranger and you're getting the B&O system, if you're happy with it, awesome. If you want to spend $260 and take it up to that next level, this is a must-have. I would have this thing in my garage waiting for the truck so that when I get home the next day I could install it. I think you'd be able to install it in 2 hours. It took me like 5.5 because I'm an idiot and I kept trying to get that freaking wire through the firewall, and it was so much of a pain, and I was doing it with the wrong tools. Knowing what I know now and what I'm going to put in this video, you guys will be able to get this thing done in no time. It should not be hard. You don't have to take any panels off. There's really not a lot to it. And I'll show you guys how I secure it as well. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that yet, but right now it's flopping around back there. Once the seat is up, it'll be good, but I have the seat down because I wanted to see that blue light turn off. So that's it for now. I will try to get some non-copyrighted music that I can play on this thing so I can show you guys how it sounds, but it's going to be really hard for you to hear how a subwoofer sounds, and I can't go back and forth. I have a couple of clips from the old sub, and then you'll be able to hear this as well. So that's it, man. Didn't get the drive shafts clean, but I did get the subwoofer in. So to me, that's a win. I'm thrilled, and I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm done here. Bye.
It's over!